Hello and welcome to Diamond Bridges. I'm your host, Irene Diamond. Now is the time for people of all generations to wake up to their true sense of purpose, to embrace their freedom, and to build bridges between a disjointed collective. The guests I have brought together today cover a wide variety of experience and skills, which we will tap into. But at the crux of all three of their missions is a driving compassion for women and children. We on the outside don't understand when people commit crimes, but we also don't understand the demoralization a female convict faces when they go to jail. There is no justice in a system that continues to unduly punish formerly incarcerated women who have served their time and paid their debt to society. In the first part of this episode, we discussed identity transformation, mental health, and lifestyle changes. Part 2 of this episode is a discussion of workforce development. Today I have invited 3 guests. Alyson McNair is a millennial woman who has created Perfect Inc., a nonprofit organization focused on helping to connect previously incarcerated women with employment training, mental health support, lifestyle resources, and opportunities for job placement by improving their re-entry into the workforce. Dawn Marks is a political activist, writer, and editor whose interest in women and children began organically as a mother herself who homeschooled her own 5 children. And Chloe Love is a Renaissance woman with a passion to create leaders. Founder of the Success Academy and the 10 Success Commandments, and originator of brand morphing, Chloe's own brand is to create space for diversity and to learn more from each other culturally. Thank you, ladies, for joining me and opening up your strong minds and heartfelt power. Dawn, you've moved and lived in 39 homes. Self-described nomad. What do you imagine a previously incarcerated woman feels like when she's let out of prison and from serving time, and assuming she may have children?
Yeah, well, it's hard for me actually to imagine that. But what I know that moving is for people who have been in one place for a while. And I can imagine, obviously, when you're incarcerated and your schedule and your time and all of everything about your environment is dictated, to move out into this world where everything is a decision. So initially when I started moving, you got to find the dentist, you got to find the doctor, you got to find where you're going to take your children to play, you have to find the grocery store. I wasn't previously incarcerated, but it's overwhelming. So on the one hand, moving all of that has been a sort of life-defining experience, just because that is part of my story and part of my tapestry. But I also, the upside of that is anybody who tells me that they have a move, it's like, well, I've turned into sort of a moving expert at this point. I have a whole bunch of, things that I can, hints that I can give you, moving hacks. And so for a woman coming out into the world, the big things is housing, transportation, healthcare, and how do you go about figuring out where those things are going to happen? And that's where Alyson's comes in, and those sorts of agencies that come in to help. Because just to put somebody out and go, okay, you're gonna move across from Seattle to New York City, go for it. There has to be a starting place. Somebody has to give you some guidance. Somebody has to be able to walk you through the steps, and go back to finding on that map. Alyson, where are you today? Where are you?
You're a writer and a professional writer for people in various industries. What do you think she's up against when she's re-entering, or maybe even entering the job market for the first time? I mean, from a literacy perspective.
What I know from experience, because I am a part of my husband owns a business, and we've been at it for 25 years. We do a lot of interviewing, and I look at a lot of resumes. So what I know, this isn't how I approach things, but I know that what you can face is, starts from the beginning, the resume. If you don't have a solid presentation, there are so many hiring authorities who are just not even going to pay attention just from that. And what I know is that behind that resume, because I've done enough of them, is this whole beautiful person. And so I want to get to what's behind the resume. So there's that. There is how do you go into that environment? I have been very fortunate. While I have been working, in this business, I've also been at home. I've been able to do it from home. And so the whole professional dress and all of that, sometimes I think about that now. It's like, oh, if I had to go out and actually, have a professional wardrobe, but having some guidance about how to do that, and communication skills. It's kind of daunting, the number of things that someone needs guidance on. And I am very grateful that there's people that are out there and providing that. And it's just not letting you out and saying, well, here's your job, go to work.
Yeah. Alyson, tell us about your employment training and paid internships you arrange for women through Perfect Inc.
So we have a 12-week curriculum where the first 4 weeks we've partnered with Microsoft. So we train them on the Microsoft platform. So that way, once they finish their first 4 weeks, they actually are Microsoft Innovative Educators, which means that they get the stamp from Microsoft to go into any organization and teach that organization how to use a Microsoft product or a product on the Microsoft platform. We also teach them social media management and content creation. And that was infused into our curriculum because as a small business owner, I have no desire for social media. I know, tap my hand. I should not say it out loud, but I promise you it's the truth. It just doesn't come naturally for me, and it's more of a burden for me than it is a joy. But I realized that as a small business owner, having $100 an hour to pay somebody to do it wasn't feasible. So we figured we can take carve out a piece of that market, and if we can train our perfectors on how to create that content, how to help small business owners tell their story digitally, they can help the small business owner by a fraction of the price. But then we can also help our perfectors to get jobs in those industries where they can help others, but also get a good rate of employment if they choose to start their own business as well. And then we also teach them time management. We teach them how to deal with conflict resolution. We teach them about office politics. This is all covered in our employment training in the first 4 weeks of our curriculum. And then for the remaining 8 weeks, we pay them an internship. We give them a paid internship at an hourly wage. And what we do is we partner with various organizations that says, hey, we would like to work with you where our perfector will come into your organization and you don't have to worry about paying for them. Our organization will take care of their hourly fee. But what we would like is for you guys to help us continue to professionally develop them. Mm-hmm. So what this does is that it's a bubble that's created where the perfector doesn't have to worry about if I make one mistake, they're going to fire me. Mm-hmm. If I say this wrong, they're going to fire me. They can kind of just go in and still learn, still develop, still know that their hourly wage is coming in, and it releases that burden of, if I make one false move, I'm going to be fired. So that's how it helps the perfectors. And of course, we help the small business owner because they're able to get the resource of having someone there to work for them, but they don't have that resource of the financial part of paying them. So it ends up being a win-win for us as well as a win-win for our internship partner.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So that's how we train them.
What does the term forgotten population mean to you, and how does Perfect Inc. help them to go through reentry without shame?
So if you think about it, everyone that's watching today that doesn't have the exposure to knowing someone that's been formerly incarcerated or being formerly incarcerated themselves, I can guarantee you, if we took a poll of those individuals that doesn't have that exposure, and we asked them, how many times do you think about the people that's been incarcerated? 9 times out of 10, people are going to get 100% response with the answer of no. They don't think about people who's been incarcerated. They don't think about how they're getting jobs. They don't think about how they're moving into their apartments, or they don't think about how do they get a resource to buy a home. They don't think about those things. So because that's not thought about with our society, people who's been incarcerated are the forgotten population. Even I think about what Chloe was mentioning about diversity and inclusion. Well, diversity and inclusion isn't about your sex. It's not only just about your sexual preference or the color of your skin or your location, but diversity and inclusion should include people who's been formerly incarcerated. And those are the first group of individuals that most organizations will put to the side and say, no, I'm so sorry, we're not hiring you. If they check that box that says I have a felony, they're 9 times out of 10, they're not being hired. To Dawn's point about the resume, think about it. If I'm a person that I've been in jail for the last 12 years, and then you have another person that hasn't been in jail, okay, well, there's a big gap in my resume. I probably won't be called in for an interview. But that other person who doesn't have that gap, they may be more likely called in for the interview. So once again, to Dawn's point, no one's figuring out, okay, well, what's the gap here? Let me just reach out. And the sad part is that statistically, it is shown that people who've been incarcerated are more loyal to their employer than those who haven't been. Because the mindset is they're just so grateful for the opportunity. They stick with the mindset of, I wouldn't want to mess this up. So they will be the hardest worker. They will be the ones that come in first and leave last. They will do whatever's necessary because they're more grateful for the opportunity. So the forgotten population is just something that I've coined because really at the end of the day, no one really thinks about them or even thinks, how can I help them? How can I strengthen them? And a lot of times our recidivism rates are geared towards, oh, they're just criminals. No, they're individuals who didn't have an opportunity to get past their mistakes, whatever they were.
Yeah. And they've served their time. Yeah. So Chloe, your mission is to create leaders. Tell us about the Success Academy 5 steps.
Oh, so the Success Academy is my online school. So there are different courses under the Success Academy. There's all you need to know about credit. There's the From Business to Bigness course, and that teaches the fundamentals of how to implement the best structure for your business, how to fund in unique ways, and how to monetize on your business. There's brand morphing, which is the brand creation plan, how you're going to monetize, but the business plan is what we're going to do to make that plan happen. And there are a few more curriculums that I'm working on, from how to find your niche to leadership and mindset courses that are just geared towards that. So the academy is just that. It's an academy for greatness. And I create programs, courses, and methods to help people with wherever they're at on that map that Alyson spoke about, so they can kind of cherry pick
Preferences.
but just pay an overall membership to, get access to wherever they're at.
So what specifics would you say are important for any person having transformed their identity and then entering the workforce?
I definitely think mindset is a big part of it. A lot of things take me back to that commandment number 9: do not confuse the process with the outcome, because it's not about how you fall, but it's how you get back up. There are a lot of people that have had trouble with the law, or who have been incarcerated at one point in their life, that are very successful. I do like the lane for a lot of people who have been incarcerated in entrepreneurism. And that is because sometimes, even though it's a bad situation, you got to take the good from it. A lot of people who have been incarcerated have been in who they've had to show up for a certain time, or go to bed by a certain time, or be here. It's so structured in a lot of places that actually would give them more discipline to be able to be successful in entrepreneurism. So I do love that. And I do love the ability to tell a story, not about what happened to you, but who you are. And we actually learned that as mothers. A lot of mothers go through that too. Oh, well, I didn't work for this amount of time because I was taking care of the kids. Well, guess what? That was a job. If you were incarcerated and you helped people read books, write, exercise, fitness training, the time that you were there doing something can also be articulated into how you grew from that, what you learned from that, and how that can also serve what the employer or themselves in their business, they can serve their clients. So it's just really the saying of, when life throws you lemons, make lemonade, and really reflect on the story of, not that this happened to you, but what happened through that time, what you learned from it, and what you can share and offer from that experience.
So I'm going to ask a question openly, and whoever feels compelled to answer first can go ahead. But how do you think a previously incarcerated woman, can earn the trust either of their employer or their client, someone they're working with?
So for us, like I said, our niche, I thought, was being able to give them guaranteed employment. And what that means, or what that looks like for our organization, is that we act as an advocate on their behalf. So to Chloe's point, we go into some of our employment partners, or CVS, Nordstrom, Starbucks. We have some smaller businesses as well. Our organization acts as an advocate, and we tell the story of the perfecter. This is why they were incarcerated. This is what happened. This is the steps that they've taken, post incarceration. These are the steps that they took while they were incarcerated. This is their mindset from then into there. And what that does is, and it's very important, is that maybe if I'm incarcerated, it's hard for me to win your trust, because that Jiminy Cricket, I think Chloe said before,
Yeah.
It's like loud on sometimes the interviewer, and what they're saying is this person's going to steal. This person might mess up my flow. I've had a friend that I approached her. She has a business, and I said, hey, do you want to have one of our perfecters, come in? And she was just starting out her business, and you can become an internship partner. And she literally told me, I'm not really sure about it. And it threw me off, because I'm like, do you think that I would, recommend somebody to you that would not help advance your cause? So those are what people are thinking, is how can this person diminish or interrupt everything that I'm trying to do? But what happens is if you have an advocate that looks like, quote unquote, me, or looks like the way that you're supposed to look, and then I'm able to say, this person has the stamp of approval, and this is why, that person is now more lenient in not listening to those biases that they have, because someone advocated for them on their behalf.
So it becomes a placement for that.
Absolutely. And it's like they're willing to take a chance because they trust the advocate more than they trust the person.
I mean, at some point, though, they are on their own. You know,
they are on their own, but what we reassure all of our employment partners is that we don't leave them. So we go in and we do our checks with the perfecter after they get their job. And then we also check with the employment partner. Hey, how is Sally doing? What's going on? Has she had any hiccups? Is she coming on time? We still check in. And another thing that helps is that 8-week internship that we do, we take all of the performance evaluations from the internship partner and we allow the employment partner to see. For 8 weeks, this person has came on time. For 8 weeks, this person has done this. For 8 weeks, this person has done that. And once again, we can't erase all of the biases, but we just want to cut them down line upon line, precept upon precept.
Anybody else?
Well, I think to piggyback off what Alyson was saying, I think that's great. And I think maybe another segment of that or another stage to that program, if it's something that, you think makes sense, is to now teach them how to speak like that for themselves. Mm-hmm. After that. Now, how do I say, hey, I know you're going to look on this resume and see this, but this is the work that I've done and this is how I've showed up. So it's like, I love battle rap. Like that's one of my favorite things, right? So I love rap music. In 8 Mile, Eminem's, that was his whole tactic. He knew what the other team was going to say about him in the battle. So he said it. He addressed it first. And it removes that elephant out the room. And I think what that would do for the other person, what it would do for me is that you've owned this. Yep. You've owned it, not in the sense of, oh, I did a bad thing, but I've owned it as in the sense of this happened to me and I've taken the steps to do what I needed to do, to be sitting in front of you right now and saying, this is why I would be a good fit. So I think that
not in denial, in other words, no denial. No, it's right. Not in
denial, but also too just saying that, look what I've overcome, wearing it as a kind of badge of honor, if you will. Look what I've overcome. I've been hit with this thing, but I didn't let it keep me down. And it was a lesson that I learned, and the actionable steps that I've taken to show that I've learned whatever lessons I needed to, because learning a lesson doesn't mean that you were guilty. Right. It just means that you were in a situation and you were able to learn something from it. And I've applied that here. So I'm ready to move past that and go on to better things.
And Chloe, one of your pillars of your faith is that you know that it's easy to make change, but sustaining change.
Yeah, I say obtaining is hard. Yeah. Obtaining is easy, but maintaining is the hard part. So, I usually say that with money, but it happens with everything. I've seen it with people with weight loss. Like, they dropped a lot of pounds or they've gotten that surgery and they're where they need to be, but now I got to keep it here. And sometimes it doesn't work. So it's a lot easier to obtain something, but to maintain is the hard part. So like Alyson said, for 8 weeks, I did this. For 3 months, I've done that. For 6 months, I've done this. Not only did I obtain a situation or change, I've been able to maintain it. And that history shows that this is the path I'm on, and that can kind of be foresight on where I'm going. Yeah. So yeah, I usually use it in money and funding, but it works out in other areas of life.
All right, let's stay tuned for the talent segment in the living room now. See you in a minute. For the talent segment of Diamond Bridges today, I am featuring Dawn Marks, whose writings of hard stories is themed around redemption. Dawn, you describe seasons for having lived and loved a lot of people through some tough times. What have you selected to share with us today?
I am sharing a small piece of what's going to be a longer bit of writing. When I originally started, I had this character, this voice just come into my head, sort of full blown. And it was like, okay, I have to go with this. I was trying to contain it into a short story format, and all of my writing, the folks who, are in me in writers groups are with me in writers groups, just were like, this is longer, this is more and bigger, and you just need to make it bigger and longer. So I am in the process of that. So there is a part of it, the part that I'm going to read, which is pretty fully formed and has had a lot of attention paid to it. And then there's the new stuff that I'm working on. But I do have now a pretty clear idea of where it's all going to go. It's a working title, possibly Feeding the 5,000, a Modern Tale, possibly the greatest cook in the world. And so it's interesting that cooking came into this conversation. So I'm gonna read, and that's what I'll do. I was born in a small windowless room in an ancient cabin on the shores of Little Big Heart Lake. Attending my unplanned nativity were a lay midwife, more lake sprite than licensed practitioner, my laboring mother and father, and a cadre of their friends and hangers-on, culinary artists in their own rights, who reveled and camped magi-like, offering cooking implements as welcoming gifts to the newborn babe. Also in attendance were 8 grandparents, grands and greats, still stout, mobile, and flexible. Great-grandma Iris and her daughter, my grandmother, Constance, spent my mother's exceedingly long labor shifting from one yoga position to another with each contraction, competing to see who could move from one-handed tree pose to holding lotus longest. Grandmas May and Verda were trying to teach the grandfathers to knit. Only the barnyard animals were missing from the rapturous spectacle. As my mother grunted and pushed, the grandmothers contorted, and the grandfathers continued their knitting lesson, my father pulled pots and saute pans and a hidden supply of rudimentary but sharp knives from the cabinet under the sink and invited the expectant crew to cook. Everything got tossed into the pots. An alchemical transmutation ensued through blanching, basting, and brining. And as with Jesus feeding the 5,000, all in the little cabin were fed. After many hours of pushing on my mother's part and sauteing on my father's part, dinner and I were ready. I was born into the heady smells of whatever esoteric ingredients were on hand: cumin, turmeric, bok choy, and cheeses from Brie to Zamorano. Ever present in the Ferroni larder were peppers, Carolina reapers, and Trinidad scorpions that made habaneros register mild on the Scoville scale. One resourceful reveler, spying the cherries on the tree outside the kitchen window, flambéed them into cherries jubilee to laud my arrival. It goes without saying that this helter-skelter approach to cooking, the creation of something from nothing to feed the masses, had an abiding and monumental impact on my own later culinary adventures. Born nearly 2 weeks past my due date, preternaturally thick Vernix caseosa, a delightful cheesy varnish that not only kept the waters of the amniotic sac from pruning me as if I'd spent too much time in the bath, but greased the skid, so to speak, for my trip down the birth canal, coated my newborn skin. The copious downy lanugo revealed as the midwife tenderly massaged and wiped away the vernix provoked a terror-filled shriek from my father. "It's a monkey," he cried, seeing the downy fur that covered my face. As I grew and as the lanugo fell away, my father regaled anyone willing to listen with the details of my birth, hinting that, but for my mother's insistence on keeping me and the reveler's refusal to take me, the tabula rasa of my childhood may have told a very different tale. As it stands, it remains a tale better left untold. Suffice it to say that the Irish inclination toward drink and the Italian declination to passion left me orphaned at 20, cirrhosis of the liver for mother, and prison for my father after a confounding arson incident soon after my mother's death, involving the neighbor discovering his wife and my father in flagrante delicto. It was never clear who actually lit the match. The neighbor's house was more scrap heap than home, although he did have it insured. My father always attested that picking up the lighter fluid was inadvertent. He testified, merely dousing his sorrows after losing my mother, his one true love. He died of a broken heart after mere months in prison, long before completing his sentence. I carry Frank's ashes in a biodegradable urn made from mulberry bark in the cart I push up on my travels up First Avenue. When he died, I was the best cook in the world, although few outside my family have heard of me. My fame, ninja-like, is stealthy and rarely precedes me. I am Fiona Frances Ferroni, a name unfolding joy like a buttery foie gras, its luxurious melting syllables softening hardened tongues as they vibrate from the lips into the cavity of the mouth, finally to be swallowed by the throat. I have hunted lions in Botswana, roller derbied in Duluth, and plucked corn tassels in Tasmania. I have ridden a bicycle 200 miles in one day. It was my voluptuous vindaloo that became Frank's last supper. But this is not a tale of travels or ashes, but of the implements I carry. Like most cooks, I was born without a silver spoon in my mouth, to the aforementioned curly red-headed Irish washerwoman of dubious character and the fast-talking Italian by way of Romania who spoke with his hands. From my mother, I received my freckles and creamy alabaster skin. From my father's hands, my skills with a knife and a potato peeler.
Wow.
Wow.
That was great.
It was.
Thank you.
I thought it was interesting how you could fast forward and like travel through time in a very short period of time. I guess that's what would make it more like a short story, but also the locations were very descriptive.
So the big picture here is that Fiona comes from her background, which is in this little cabin and born at home, and is introduced to someone who's an inventor and has made a lot of money. And so she lives with a lot of money and she becomes a mother. And so this is identity, what we're
That's
talking
how the
about.
story is developed.
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
And then, life happens and whatnot. And Fiona actually ends up homeless. But that desire to nurture, as a homeless woman, she's been, she knows people. So as a homeless person, she's homeless, but she goes back to those people that she knows, those restaurant folks that she's been actively involved in. And she's like, I need your leftovers, the stuff that you're going to throw out. And she cooks for other homeless people.
Oh,
That's the trajectory of and then in the meantime, she has to figure out, obviously if she's homeless, she's lost connection with her children. So that's a piece of the story too, but.
that's awesome. Well, I want to thank my viewing audience. Chloe, where can people find you?
You can find me at Instagram, Chloe Love, CLOELUV, or www.chloelove.com.
Great. Alyson, where can they find find out about Perfect Ink?
Definitely visit our website, www.perfectinc.org. And then we're on all social media platforms, Perfect Inc. 129.
Great. And Dawn, thank you so much for opening up to us reading that beautiful writing today.
Thank you.
I want to thank my viewing audience for joining me today. See you next time on Diamond Bridges. Tune in to our monthly episodes. Turn on your alerts to find a new episode of Diamond Bridges on the first Monday of every month. And listen to our gemstones, which are the highlights of the show episodes. See you next time.